Marcus is 32 years old. He lives in a one-bedroom apartment in Scarborough, pays $2,200 a month in rent, and earns $85,000 a year before taxes. By any reasonable measure, he's doing fine. He is not behind on bills. He does not carry credit card debt. He makes his own coffee, tracks his spending, and has been putting away $2,000 a month into a high-interest savings account for the past 4 years. 4 years, 24 months of discipline, 48 months of saying no to things he wanted. He now has $96,000 saved, and he still cannot buy a house in the city where he lives, not because he stopped saving, not because he made a mistake, but because 4 years ago, the down payment he needed was roughly $80,000. Today, that same entry-level home, a small semi-detached in a neighborhood nobody would call desirable, costs $940,000. The minimum down payment on that is now $68,000 just for the first $500,000, plus 10% on everything above that. All in, he needs closer to $120,000 liquid before closing costs. He ran hard for 4 years and the finish line moved further away. That is not a personal failure, that is a structural problem. And if you have ever stared at a savings account balance and felt like no matter how disciplined you are never quite catching up. This video is about why that feeling is mathematically correct and what is actually happening underneath it. Let us start with a number that does not get enough attention. The average Canadian salary has grown at roughly 3% per year over the past decade. That sounds okay. 3%, cost of living adjustments, modest raises. You are keeping up, but in Toronto, home prices increased at an average of around 7 to 9% per year over that same period. In Vancouver, similar story. In some pockets of the country, even faster. What does that mean in practice? It means the gap between what you earn and what a home costs is not staying the same. It is widening every single year, and it widens faster than you can save. Here is the math that most people have never sat down and actually done. The average resale home in Canada now sits at approximately $677,000 nationally. But that is the national average, pulled down by smaller cities and slower markets. In the Greater Toronto Area, the benchmark for an average home crosses $1 million, in Metro Vancouver $1,115,000. These are not luxury properties. These are average homes, condos, townhouses, semi-detacheds, pulling that number toward the middle. The detached house with a backyard that a family might actually need, add another 50% on top. Now here is what it actually costs to walk into a home at $700,000 in Ontario. Not just the down payment, the real number. Your minimum down payment on a $700,000 home is $45,000, 5% on the first $500,000, 10% on the remaining $200,000. That gets you in the door, technically, but then comes CMHC mortgage insurance. Because you put down less than 20%, you are required to buy insurance that protects the bank, not you. On a $655,000 mortgage with a 3.5% down payment tier, that premium is approximately $22,715. It does not come out of your pocket up front. It gets added to your mortgage balance, but it is real money you are paying interest on for 25 years. Then land transfer tax in Ontario on a $700,000 home, approximately $9,475. If you buy inside the city of Toronto, you pay a second municipal land transfer tax on top of that. Double, nearly $20,000 just to transfer a title into your name. That is cash, due on closing day. No mortgage covers it. Legal fees, $1,500 to $2,500. Home inspection, $500. Title insurance, $300. Moving costs, $1,500. Immediate repairs and updates on a home that sat on the market at $700,000, budget another $5,000 minimum, likely more. Add it up. To buy a $700,000 home in Ontario as a first-time buyer, you need roughly $85,000 to $100,000 in liquid cash on top of your mortgage qualification, not someday. On closing day, that is the real entry price, not the listing. Now, there is a story Canadians have been told for years about why people do not own homes. The story goes like this: if you just saved more, spent less, gave up the avocado toast, skipped the vacations, drove a used car, eventually you would get there. Home ownership is a reward for discipline. The people who have it earned it. The people who do not have it yet just need to try harder. It is a clean narrative, it puts the responsibility entirely on the individual, and it is wrong. Let us run the actual numbers on a realistic Canadian trying to save for a home today. Someone earning $75,000 gross in Ontario takes home approximately $55,000 after federal and provincial income tax. That works out to about $4,580 per month. Now let us subtract the unavoidable costs of living in a major city. Average rent for a one-bedroom in Toronto, $2,400 per month. Groceries for one person, $500. Transportation, whether a transit pass or a used car with insurance, $350. Phone, $80. Internet, $70. Basic health costs, prescriptions, dentist, $100. That is already $3,500 gone. Before any clothing, any social life, any unexpected expense, any contribution to an RRSP. What is left in the best case scenario with tight discipline? $500 to $700 per month to save toward a home. At $600 per month, it takes roughly 12 and a half years to save $90,000. 12 and a half years. Now here is the trap. While you are saving those 12 years, the market does not freeze. A home that costs $700,000 today, appreciating at 6% per year, costs $1,407,000 in 12 years. The down payment you now need is not $90,000, it is closer to $180,000. You saved for 12 years, and you need twice as much as when you started. You did not fall behind because you were careless. You fell behind because you were playing a game where the rules change faster than you can move. This is not a savings problem, this is a structural problem. And the sooner you understand the difference, the better the decisions you will make with the money you do have. So if most people cannot save their way into the market, how are homes actually selling? Prices are high, sales are happening, someone is buying. And the answer tells you something uncomfortable about how wealth works in Canada in 2025. Let us start with the people who bought early. Someone who purchased a detached home in Toronto in 2005 for $350,000 is now sitting on a property worth roughly $1,300,000 to $1,500,000. Their mortgage is almost certainly paid off or close to it. They did not make a series of brilliant financial decisions. They bought a house at the right time, in the right city, and waited. The market did the rest. That equity does not sit idle. It moves. It becomes the down payment for a second property. It becomes the inheritance or the gift that funds a child's down payment. It becomes leverage for a home equity line of credit at preferential rates. Wealth that was built passively by rising prices becomes active capital for the next generation of asset acquisition. Meanwhile, the people who did not buy in 2005, or whose parents did not, are renting. And the rent they pay every month flows directly to the people who did. This is not a coincidence, this is how the system compounds. The banking sector has no reason to change this. Every time a home sells at a higher price, the mortgage is larger. A larger mortgage means more interest collected over 25 years. A bank that writes a $700,000 mortgage at 4% over a 25-year amortization collects approximately $404,000 in interest over the life of that loan. That is on top of the principal, and if the borrower defaults, CMHC insurance, paid by the borrower, covers the bank's loss. The bank absorbs almost no downside risk from high prices. The government has a similar alignment. Land transfer taxes scale with the sale price. A home selling at $700,000 generates more provincial and municipal tax revenue than a home selling at $400,000. Higher prices mean higher tax receipts. No government official is going to stand up and say the quiet part loud, but higher home prices are, in a very real way, good for government revenue. And then there is the investor class. According to various estimates, somewhere between 20 and 30% of homes purchased in Canada in recent years were bought by investors, people who already own property purchasing additional units to rent out. These purchases put additional upward pressure on prices, which benefits the property they already own while they collect rent from people who cannot buy. A person paying $2,400 a month in rent to a landlord who owns 7 condos is not just funding someone else's lifestyle. They are actively contributing to the wealth accumulation of someone positioned on the other side of a line they cannot cross. The system is not broken, It is working exactly as designed. The question is, working for whom? Here's the part that does not get said enough. Most Canadians who buy homes today do not do it on income alone. According to research from CIBC and various mortgage industry surveys, more than 30% of first-time homebuyers in Canada receive financial assistance from their families. The average gift or loan from parents is approximately $115,000. Let that register, $115,000. That is not a small top-up. That is the entire down payment for many buyers. And in high-cost markets like Toronto and Vancouver, it is closer to covering the gap between what someone can save and what the market actually demands. What this means, practically, is that the housing market in Canada is increasingly a function of inherited wealth, not earned income. Two people with identical salaries, identical saving habits, identical credit scores, one whose parents bought a house in 1992 and one whose parents rented their whole lives, will have radically different access to home ownership. Not because of anything they did, because of which family they were born into. This is a generational wealth gap operating in plain sight. The children of homeowners get capital, the children of renters get advice to save more, and even among those who do get the gift and manage to buy, the story does not end there. A couple buying a $900,000 home in Toronto with a gifted down payment of $120,000 is still taking on a $780,000 mortgage. At current rates, their monthly payment is approximately $4,100. Add property taxes, insurance, and maintenance, and their total monthly housing cost clears $5,500. On a combined household income of $150,000, that is 44% of gross income going toward shelter. They have a home, but they do not have financial freedom. They have traded one kind of precarity for another. The dream was ownership. What they got was a different shape of constraint. This is where the conversation usually stops. You cannot buy or you can barely buy, and the implication is that renting is a consolation prize, a waiting room for people who have not yet arrived. But let us actually look at the numbers, because the assumption that buying is always better than renting is one of the most expensive, unchallenged beliefs in Canadian personal finance. Consider two people, both 30 years old, both with $90,000 saved. The first one uses that money as a down payment on a $700,000 home in Toronto. They take on a $610,000 mortgage at around 4%, amortized over 25 years. Their total monthly housing cost, mortgage, property tax, insurance, condo fees if applicable, maintenance, comes to approximately $4,800 per month. The second person keeps renting at $2,400 per month, and every month they invest the $2,400 difference into a diversified index fund, earning a historical average of 7% per year. They also invest the original $90,000 at the same rate. After 25 years, the renter's investment portfolio has grown to approximately $1,900,000. The buyer, after 25 years, owns a home that has also appreciated. Let's say the same $700,000 home is now worth $2 million at conservative appreciation. But they have paid approximately $830,000 in interest over that mortgage. They have paid $200,000 or more in property taxes. They have spent $150,000 in maintenance, repairs, and upgrades. Their real net gain in wealth from the home, after all costs, is closer to $700,000 to $800,000. The renter ends up with more liquid wealth. Now, this is not a universal argument against buying. There are real advantages to ownership: stability, autonomy, the ability to renovate, hedge against rent increases, build equity as a form of forced savings. These things matter, and individual outcomes depend enormously on specific cities, specific timing, specific properties. But the point is this: renting while investing is not a failure. It is a coherent financial strategy. And treating it as one, consciously, clearly, without shame, changes how you relate to money and to the choices in front of you. The person who rents because they cannot buy is reactive. The person who rents because they have decided it is the right tool for building wealth right now is operating from a position of clarity. That distinction matters more than the decision itself. The Canadian housing market is not going to collapse into affordability. The political incentives run the wrong way. The financial incentives run the wrong way. The wealth of too many people depends on prices staying elevated, and those people have more influence over policy than the people who are locked out. That is not cynicism, That is an accurate reading of where the incentives sit. So, what does that leave you with? It leaves you with this. The question is no longer simply, when will I be able to buy? The question is, what am I actually trying to build, and what is the most honest path to get there? Some people will buy, not because they saved harder than everyone else, but because they inherited capital, or because they are in a city where prices still meet income, or because they are two incomes and willing to stretch. Some of those people will build real wealth through homeownership. Others will be house rich and cash poor for 25 years, watching every expense against a mortgage that leaves no room. Some people will rent, not because they failed, but because they are in cities where the math does not work, or because they have made a clear-eyed decision to deploy capital differently. Some of those people will build real wealth through investing. Others will feel unmoored without the forced saving structure of a mortgage and drift. Neither path is automatically right. Both paths have real consequences. What is dangerous is not choosing one over the other. What is dangerous is letting the system choose for you. Buying because you are terrified of being left behind, or renting passively while your savings erode to inflation without ever sitting down and running the numbers that are specific to your life, your city, your income, your actual goals. The housing trap is not just a price trap, it is a thinking trap. It convinces you that there is one right answer, that the answer is obvious, and that anyone who does not achieve it on schedule has done something wrong. None of that is true. The people who come out ahead are not necessarily the ones who bought at the right time, though some of them got lucky. They are the ones who understood the game they were actually playing, not the one they were told they were playing, and made decisions with open eyes. That is the only edge available to most Canadians right now, and it turns out it is a significant one.
If this story changed the way you see money, subscribe for more deep story about finance, power, and the system behind it.